Okay, so welcome back. This episode, we are going to be talking about homeschooling, something we are all very passionate about. Um, if you don't homeschool and you listen into this, take it as a way to maybe work with your kids' learning styles when they get back from school. Because honestly, I think the best education, whether you go to school or not, parents need to be involved. Like there's so many things that you as a parent, you have so many hours with your kids at the end of the day or even the weekends. Just it's a lot about learning your parenting styles. Let's just jump right in. Why don't you talk about Stephanie? I learned about The Good and the Beautiful from her, and I actually just started it a year ago, and I'm in love with it. But I want Stephanie to talk a little bit about what the curriculum offers, the language arts curriculum specifically.
Specifically language arts, yes.
So go for it.
So my first year of homeschooling, I had a really hard time the first 6 months, and I was like lesson planning and doing all these things that you don't need to be doing. But I was doing all these things, and someone brought up to me halfway through my year, The Good and the Beautiful language arts. And about January, I was like, if this is what homeschool is, I'm not doing it. She's going back to school. She was in first grade, so she had gone to kindergarten, my oldest, and then we pulled her home. And someone mentioned The Good and the Beautiful's language arts, and I looked it up online, and I was like, well, it's only $45, or I think at the time that's what the level 1 was. And I thought, well, that's not very expensive. Even if I hate it, oh well, $45 is $45. So I bought it in January, halfway through our school year, and instantly loved it. Couple things that I love about their language arts program, and I have tried to go away from it and try other ones, and I always go back. Always. And so now I'm like, why do I even try? I'm sure there might be ones that work out there for other people, but this one is just so inclusive. It has spelling, it has reading, writing, phonics, geography, art, poetry,
music.
It has everything. And there's zero prep work for mom. You open it up, they're short, concise lessons that are packed. It tells you exactly what to do. You read to the child reads to you.
Has little check marks, which is super fun.
Which is totally the type A personality in me. I'm like, yes, I get so much satisfaction from checking
things off.
Dictation, it literally has everything.
Yep.
And if you are a new homeschool mom, I cannot recommend this enough for new homeschool moms because it's so simple.
Yes.
And it's right there. I think every homeschool mom sometimes has that tinge. The more years I go, the less I have it. But in the beginning, am I doing enough? Am I giving them enough? Am I teaching them everything they need to know? And I feel that way with this over and beyond. I mean,
yeah. And so, something to add to that, like I have used the PACEs for a while, and I do like the PACEs. They have their place, and I feel like there were certain things, and I'll probably like sub a couple things with my 5-year-old when she gets to the point of using that. But it's only going to be for a short time. Something I really appreciate about the language arts of The Good and the Beautiful, and this is not an ad. This is a bragging.
Yeah,
this is bragging rights.
It works. Yeah.
And the lessons are very short. Like I appreciate that. Like less is more. My kids know more and they're less stressed because everything is concise. Like you're not going to do an art lesson every day. You'll do it maybe every few lessons, but that's so enjoyable. Geography gets thrown in there. And all these subjects that would probably cost, I would say maybe $400 to $500 if I bought each of these subjects individually from different curriculums, cost me a total of $80 per kid.
Yes.
I would say on average.
On average, yeah.
For language arts.
Yep.
Well, definitely highly recommend The Good and the Beautiful if you're just starting out, or like even if you've been in it a while and you're just like, I'm sick and tired of teaching my kids for 12 hours a day.
Right.
Like I have 6 kids and we homeschool, and it takes me from about 9 o'clock to 12:30 to get all of them done. Now I do I'm one of those that sits down and it's like you, and everybody's gonna like, I'm not playing around. You're gonna finish your school right now, right here. And being able to do that in that amount of time for that many kids is just so rewarding. And then we get to work on the other things in our life. Like, we get to go outside and learn whatever it is we want to do out there, use your imagination. For those who might have high schoolers, science is a big thing. Like that was probably one of the hardest subjects for me to locate.
Yeah.
I cheated.
In any grade. I mean, really, science for me is just not an interest.
Yes. But I cheated. I got on Instagram and I was like, all right, all you cool moms who know all the things, what's your favorite science curriculum? And Ariel high schooler, I think. I do like Good and the Beautiful for science for kids because it's just so inclusive.
Yeah.
But what is your recommendations for science from a high schooler? And can you give like maybe more than one that people can like look at and maybe get value from?
Yeah. So I do have a high schooler. She's due to graduate next year. And we can have a whole podcast when we talk about like transcripts and like what to do for career
That would be
paths
very
and,
beneficial.
yeah, trades. But as far as science goes, so for my state specifically, the way it's written is she has to have so many sciences. So she definitely needs to have chemistry and biology and some other things. What we looked at and this is just me personally in homeschooling, when I go to homeschool my child, I ask them what they are most interested in. Now, there are some things that you're like, well, I know you're not interested in it, or like you hate school, but we're going to do this anyway. But for the most part, I've been asking my children what they're interested in. And so we've been going like that instead of going, okay, ninth grade, you need to do biology, and 10th grade, you need to do this. It's like, no, let's get the box packs of KiwiCo. Let's get KiwiCo boxes, the engineer packs, and let's ease into science because you may not be finding it very enjoyable. And then we'll get like supplement books here and there. But my biggest recommendation for parents when they're on the search for a curriculum is, of course, and this really gears more towards Christian homeschoolers, but I know secular people really enjoy this curriculum as well. If you go to christianbooks.com, you can browse through their curricula, and it is wide and varied, and you may not know where to go. If you go to a homeschooling conference, they usually have booths and tables with all kinds of curricula that you can go through. If you have a homeschooling co-op in your area, if you ask to get together and share curriculas, that's another way for you to get your hands on curriculum and like really hold it in your hand, flip through it, see if this is something your child can manage to do. Personally, we used Science Shepherd. That's the new one for biology that we really. So my daughter is doing biology this year, and she's going through Science Shepherd, and she really likes that. It's not for everybody. I do know that the science curriculums through the Good and the Beautiful don't normally go up to high school level. To make it high school level when it is not a high school curriculum, it's more about hours, and you can find supplemental material to do that. You can find it online. You can have them go through free portals. There's online labs now where they can dissect things virtually. But again, looking in your community, seeing what's out there already, there might be groups that do things for science. So you can shuffle off science to another teacher in your group. So there's lots of options for science. I know that's the tricky one with people. I say get connected with your local community. That's number one. Number two, start shopping. And number three, really figure out how your child learns and how much time you're willing to put into this one subject. If you're spread out through a bunch of subjects, maybe you don't want to spend all the time. So maybe you get the KiwiCo box or another, the Mel labs are great for chemistry. Get a lab and supplement with living books. Maybe you can find literature. The Good and the Beautiful just had a good one, Louis Pasteur. It's all about pasteurization. And it's a living book that we went along with microbiology this year. It was super easy. So lots of ways to do it.
I think you were really on point with like I love the fact that you let your kids like after like reading, writing, and arithmetic are the things that I'm like you have to do. And then other than that, like even with the older kids, I'm like, okay, so what science do you want to learn? Like what interests you? Like what history books do you want to read? And just making sure that your kids actually enjoy what they're studying. Because I have found my kids, they do better at their writing assignments. They do better at like even just like being involved in their school if they have a say in what they're doing. So once they get their reading, writing, and arithmetic down, I don't care what their interests are. Like we'll fit science and history and all those other extra things in there based off their interests. Yeah. And I think that's such a gift to our kids, and it's teaching them this is why we learn. We learn so that you can pursue what you're called to do in life, and you'll know how to study those things in the future. And I think that sometimes we very missed because we're so focused on trying to make sure every standards. Yes, every T is crossed and every I is dotted. And that's another thing, even with like I love how the Good and the Beautiful calls each unit they do a review. It's not,
Yes.
I don't even know if it's called a test.
It's not, maybe they say assessment.
Yeah, assessment. And I love that because
Yes.
like, I don't want my kids to feel like I'm testing you. No, I'm reviewing. Did you get the
understand
information?
it so we can move forward? That's
Yeah.
what I always tell my girls too, because we use the Good and the Beautiful math as well. And that they do that with units. You know, they have an assessment just to see. And I'm like, it's not a punishment or a test. It's, do you understand it? Because if you don't, we need to stay back a little bit and make sure that we understand it before we move forward. Otherwise, it's all going to snowball on each other.
Right.
And I love that. And I also love how the Good and the Beautiful is levels.
Yes.
It's not a grade. It's not grade levels. It's just level 1, level 2, level 3. Yep. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter what grade you're in. Yep. It just matters to start where your abilities are and move forward.
Yes. Yep. Yes. So I think that's really awesome that you let your kids do that. So let's talk about math. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and just say what we use, what I love. And for grades, I actually take my kids from once they get into second grade, I put them right into teaching textbook, which starts at level 3. And I leave them on that. I love teaching textbooks because it's very self-led. Anything that could be self-led. I've heard people say like, oh, well, your kids can cheat, whatever. You can work around that. You can make sure they don't. My kids have not cheated on their math. And I have full control over the background and what's going on. And so if that's a concern, I don't know, maybe it's not for you, but to me, it's not a concern because I know the system and I know my kids know the system. One of the things I love about it is at the end of the year, you literally just with one click of a button, you can print their entire grade off. Everything they did in that, it keeps the percentage score, it keeps the letter score and all that. I love that because it's something I don't have to keep track of. Like they have it printed off from that grade. So that is currently what I use for grade 2 and up, honestly. But I don't know, you guys probably use different ones.
I use the Good and the Beautiful. I've also tried master books. I liked master books. It's more of a storybook form. So if you have a learner that or a child that learns more in storybook form, and that may be an option for you. You kind of read the story and then they have some problems that go along with the story and how it all works together. And I liked master books. I keep going back to the Good and the Beautiful, mostly because I know it's got all of the meat that I need in it. It just has so complete, and it's so hard to find that. Now, granted, after meeting Andrea this year, we've been friends for like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, almost 2.
Probably a year and a half because
I'd say year and a half.
Anyways, since then and learning about teaching textbooks, we are probably going to try teaching textbooks next year because I am looking for more hands-off, student-led. If they can learn in ways, I love doing language arts, and I'll continue to do that because that's my favorite subject, anyways. But if I can find ways to help them in other areas where one can be doing math while I'm doing language arts and filtering them through that way, that is going to be beneficial for us. So we're going to try teaching textbooks next year. But so far we've used master books for half of a year, and we've used the Good and the Beautiful.
Okay. So what about you, Ariel? Give us your math.
Yeah, I've always used Matthew C. I've used it since they were in preschool. Yeah. I really like how it's a mastering effect. You build on it. For me right now, it's minimal inputs. I think, so this is how it runs for us. On Mondays, I read the parent portion that teaches the student the new concept. We go through a couple of the problems, and then they have the whole week to do the rest of their lessons, and they test out on Friday. Now, when the children get old enough, they tend, especially if they like math, they tend to want to take it on themselves, and they go ahead and they just read at the beginning. So I don't even need to do anything but grade tests at this point. But I really like that it builds on itself, and staying within that curriculum has done really well for our family. We did supplement a little bit with the Good and the Beautiful math, and it was cool for when my son was young. And he really liked that there was more pictures, more color, more activity based. But Matthew C does have the visual aids that come with it. That's tactile that they can take out. Yep. And they can really see it. But it's math. If you love it, you love it. If you don't, you tend to not love it. But you have to tell yourself you love it anyway because it's math. So you're going to use
You have
it.
to do it.
You
That's
have
what
to
I'm
do
having
it.
to tell my grader.
Yep.
You can't stop at third grade level. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Things you
Yep.
say to your children during math. No, you love math. You love math.
You love it.
Yeah.
Look in the mirror and say, I
Yeah.
love math.
Say it.
I'm trying that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I want to move on to I want to discuss littles. I love teaching littles. Like my 4-year-old just got into that where she knows sight words and she's being able to piece things together. But I want to address the little ones because I get messages from moms that, I mean, some of them are spending 6 to 8 hours a day teaching a curriculum to their little first grader.
Yeah.
And it's because that's the curriculum they bought and stuff like that. You do not need to spend that much time with your little person. I have taught most of my kids, and I'm not saying everybody has to do this. Pick their age. If their age is 6 years old in your state, and that's how long you want to wait, you wait. However, because of my teaching style, and I have chosen to teach my kids that I could earlier because it takes 15 minutes a day, sometimes 20 minutes a day. And I don't think you need any more than that. Like 4 years old, she's reading, she's doing math, she's doing all the things that I feel like are important for her to have at 4 years old. I mean, she'll be going into first grade probably at 5. I did not have to spend 6 hours. I spent 20 minutes a day. And if the second she starts, your child starts getting antsy or hey, just let him go. Because quite frankly, the next day they're going to come back with more oomph. Some days, I have yet to have a day with Zoe where she was like, I don't want to do school. And in fact, she's over obsessed with it. She wants to do it twice a day and 7 times on Sunday. You don't need more than 20 minutes a day. And I cannot emphasize that enough. So find a curriculum that fits your teaching style. And I also want to say, for me, I have focused on more reading than I do any other subject. So one of the reasons I start that young is because I can just really hone in on reading. Math, I bring it in when I feel like they've gotten reading pretty good. But before that, I just hone in on reading. Letter Factory is a really good resource, I would say, for teaching little kids how to read. Yep. My kids will watch that. I'll let them watch that every single day until they know the ABCs backwards and forwards. And I've done that with all of my kids. And that has helped ease them into reading so they know what it looks like. This is actually the first year I've used Good and the Beautiful. I have used their level K for teaching Zoe.
Love the literature and how it builds.
Yes.
It's exactly what it needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I also love that they have the booster cards with it that with sight words and all that stuff. We should get paid for
saying how much we love Good and the Beautiful.
Yeah.
But I will say, even with the Good and the Beautiful, so my youngest, math has always been her strong subject and reading has not been. And kind of piggyback what you said, when even though the lessons are short, sometimes even those short lessons were too much for her. I could just see it in her eyes, it's all just jumbling up, and we just stop.
Yep.
Even though she was in kindergarten, even though, she was 6 and the lessons aren't that long, I learned very early on, do not power through.
Yeah.
If you power through to the point of them frustrated in tears, you've not succeeded in teaching them anything. And so now there's a fine line because kids will learn to play that.
Yep.
But especially at that young age, as soon as you lose their eyes, you've lost them completely. And don't power through.
Just let them play.
Yep. And even if you have a short lesson that the Good and the Beautiful does, even if they don't make it through that short lesson, that's okay.
Yeah. I promise you they will make it through the book.
Yes.
You just have to give them that grace to just go move on with their life and use their little imaginations. They're children. Let them live their life. And so I want to ask you, Ariel, I'm going to have you touch on this. And I know probably all of us have a little bit that we can add to this. What do you do if your child strongly dislikes a subject they're learning?
I need this right now.
Well, if they strongly dislike a subject that they're learning, so this piggybacks, Stephanie, on what you were saying about not powering through. I wouldn't necessarily power through. Personally, I would, before I dropped it, because I don't like to drop it right away. I like to try and give it its best shot. I make it fun first, and you have to hit on their senses to make it fun. So engage the five senses, bring in food, bring in taste, bring in touch, bring in sensory items, include breaks in your lesson. So maybe your lesson is 2 pages long, or you have to read this section, or they have to write this essay. Break whatever it is up into small bite-sized pieces and really break those things down into steps for them. Walk it with them. You won't have to walk with them forever. Now, this is different if you have a special needs child or someone with dyslexia or another difficult learning curve. With those, I would say you've got to learn how to grow patience and be determined in your work. If you're going to steward a child through teaching, you have to take your time with it. And it can't be about you. It's got to be about the child. But you'll know when the child has quit and no longer wants to do anything else with that subject. Hands off, take a break, and walk away, do something that they want to do instead. Do the field trip, go outside. Fresh air is one of the best breaks that you could possibly have. But I would say definitely if you could engage their senses into this, you're going to make the experience memorable. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do so that their retention rate goes up, because that's one of the biggest struggles that we have is we teach these children all of these things too young, aside from what they need to know, right? Like they need to learn how to read and how to write and how to do simple math. And they're going to hang on to that because you're drilling that almost every day, their entire growing up education. But the bigger things, you want them to remember dates on history when they're 10 years old. Like, okay.
It doesn't make sense.
If you remember the dates, good on you. That's great. I don't think you should expect too much out of children at different ages. High school is a different subject. I think they need to be challenged a lot. And if you have a child who is more of a brainiac, sure, challenge them. That's great.
Well, I think too, when they get to high school, you're now honing in on what do they want to do when they're an adult.
Yes.
And so if they want to do a profession that is strong in math, then we really need to work strong in math and get those, so I think at that point, then it's less about this is what you need to know and more about what do you want to do? And let's get you set up to do that. Right. And whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And I also want to add for littles. Okay. So sometimes when my kids get a little, like, say, I just want to power through one more little thing. I don't even remember the word. It like totally left my mind. But basically, having mini chocolate chips is like having $1 million.
Bribe.
Bribing your children. Bribing your children. Yes, I bribe with mini chocolate chips. And here's the thing. Here's my trick.
Let's all learn from the wise end.
Plug your ears. So, if I need them to read, I'll have my mini chocolate chip. Don't get big ones because you don't want them to have too much sugar. Get the mini ones, and every word they read, you stick it in a pile. Don't let them eat it right away because they just have. It's like that's their bank.
They're watching their pile grow.
Yeah. So when they're to the point where they're like, "Oh, Mom, I can't do this," or "I don't feel like doing this anymore," and I just want that last little bit because then I could celebrate the lesson is finished. That's when the bank starts, and they love it. Like you were right. If they get something right, if they read a lesson like this morning, I was doing a lesson with Zoe this morning. She read something that was incredible, and I was so proud of her, and I screamed. And I just wanted to be so excited. Like she knows this is an exciting moment in her life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just if your attitude is like, oh my gosh, I don't want to teach my kids this, or I'm really struggling, it's going to affect the way they respond to you. So I do encourage you to make sure you have a curriculum you love. I don't care what we recommended on here. It might not work for you. You find something you love.
Yeah.
And make sure your attitude's kind of good because that really helps. And if it's not good, just wait. Yeah. Just wait and it's okay.
It's okay.
To just wait for a little while. And celebrate. If they do something amazing, celebrate that. Give them a gift. Like take them somewhere. Like we have something with our kids. If you finish a grade, I try to make sure they have something to celebrate that they finished their grade. Don't be weird and
extravagant.
Yes. What she said. And break your bank. But just like, hey, we're going to go do a picnic today because of that. Or we're going to, you know, just think of things like that.
The littlest things make such a big deal to them. And you to you may not even be a big deal, but to them, it means everything.
Yes.
One of the things that I do, I have one child that struggles in math big time and it just doesn't make sense to her. And, two things that I've done with her to help, and I'm not perfect at it. We still have our struggles almost weekly, but we are learning and growing together. Is one, when I am trying to teach her a concept and I can just tell she's resisting completely and not getting it, we pause and I pull my husband in. He works on farm, so that's easy. Or we wait till the evening time. Having somebody else approach it in a different way. She was having such a hard time with clocks, and I couldn't figure out how to, like, I even had to like stop and breathe. And I'm like, I don't know how else to explain this. It was not connecting on any level. And I couldn't even, in my own brain, I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I just don't know how else to explain this to you, to get you to understand. Let's wait for daddy.
Yes.
Right.
He's gotten it for her. So anytime clocks come up, I just move her along to daddy. That's the first thing. And the other thing is she is my physical touch baby from itty bitty. She loves to be, that's her love tank. If she's having a hard time, she just wants to be hugged. And that's not mine. That is my last thing that I think to do. And I've had to learn sometimes when she starts putting her heels in, if I just rub her back or put my hand on her or hug her for 30 seconds, all of a sudden her body just relaxes and she's willing to listen to me again in what I'm explaining. And so maybe figuring out how your child perceives that love. And for me, it's words of affirmation. If you tell me I'm doing good all day long, my love tank can blow through the roof. That's not her. She could care less if you tell her she's doing good. She wants to be touched.
And that's actually really good to know. That kind of leads into the next thing, is like talking learning style. That would actually, I would say play with that. I know we're going to have to do another episode on homeschooling, probably on a few, but this one, I want to at least end with the talking about learning styles, because so you know, a lot of times when people like start homeschooling or they've been homeschooling, hopefully if you've been homeschooling for a while, you've kind of got the picture that you're not going to school, you're actually homeschooling. But they want their kids to sit there at their desk and like right there, you know, dude, some of my kids, they had to have a book and they had to be like marching in place while they were doing
stand on their head while they're doing
and just realizing like, or some kids had to hop across the thing, or we'd have to dance around the room as we're learning like how to spell something. Like your kids are going to learn so different. Some of my kids need a very quiet place where they could just focus and not be, you know, interrupted by anything in life. But just learning how your kids learn, like my one son, he did way better when I would like switch up where I homeschooled him. Like one day I would maybe homeschool him at the kitchen table. He was my marching in place guy. And then one day I would maybe sit out on a picnic blanket and like, or one day I'd sit by a window, which I had to be careful because he loves nature. So he would like stare at the window a lot, but it was just different. It was having like that switch up. Like he didn't just have the same thing he was trying to do, and just trying to learn your child and know each of them are probably very different. So if you try to approach them the same way, that it could actually be very bad for both of you. So it's not a cookie cutter with homeschooling. That's the beauty of homeschooling. You get to know your children. You get to do one-on-one with them and learn more about them. There's so many levels to learning this. But I'm going to let Ariel give it a perspective on this as well. And then we'll go to Stephanie.
Okay, so there's lots of different learning styles that your child might have with homeschooling. If you're not sure how to go about figuring out what they are, I highly suggest going to your local school, asking that question of a teacher or a para or someone who's there. They can help you figure it out. Or you can hop online and you can figure out personalities. First of all, that's a big one to know. And then what are the learning styles? As far as teaching with your learning styles, you have to be fluid. You have to adapt with your child. It's a relationship. It's not just, if you were a public schooler and you're used to that model, it's not going to look like that usually. I mean, I know some parents who do end up love having one spot. It's a desk and they go through the day. It's an 8-hour day. It's a long day for them and the parents are heavily involved. Usually those parents have burnout in my experience. you have to have balance, because homeschool is life school. You're doing it while you're living. And so most of the time, the homeschoolers I find tend to do more unschooling, which, if you're unfamiliar with that term, it's more of there's no paperwork. You're just living life and you're learning from things around you. You're observing, you're a scientist all day long. So learning what your child's style of learning is huge for you. And then you need to know how you are going to interact with your child. Mix it up, make it fun. Don't always stick to one type, because burnout's real and children get bored. My sister had my niece and nephew on life books for their entire homeschool life. And she highly regrets it, because it was a fill in the bubble type of curricula. And they would just sit down every day, read what they needed to read, fill in the bubbles, and then that was it. They didn't retain anything. And we're going to talk about that more, but we need to know that our children are retaining the information that they're getting at least once they hit 12. I mean, there's leeway for all kinds of situations, but you want your child to remember things. So you have to also think with their learning style, how can I make this moment memorable if it's something that you think is important for them to keep in their mind for life? Those are my thoughts.
Well, and that's so true. For us, it's even like making it applicable.
Yeah.
So when my daughter that struggles in math so much, we just started very little bit, but just started the basis of fractions. And she's getting them right now and she's doing great. But we've applied that over to cooking, because she loves to cook and to bake with me. Fractions are in that. If your recipe is calling for a half a cup and you only have a 1 cup measuring cup, what are you going to do? And applying that over. And she loves being out with the cattle and my husband. And so when when we were doing place values and big place values, when we're weighing big sets of cattle, it was perfect to have her posted up at the scale and reading off those numbers and showing her how important it is. And my husband would tell her, this is why math is important, because if you mix up any of these numbers, it throws the entire weight off. And that changes our weights for the trucks, for the, all the way down the line in our living. And so making school, there are things you just have to learn, but making it apply to their life. And that's when the retention happens, when it applies to their life.
I think if it's tangible and they can physically, so like if you have a curriculum and you're, like I said, it takes me about maybe 3.5 hours to actually get through all my kids' language arts. Of course, they have to do their math on their own, because and then they can bring it to me if they need help. But if your curriculum does not include teaching your children the basic of life, like how to do laundry, how to cook, how to clean, there's just no amount of book work you can do that will give you those experiences that only a parent can give. So I don't care if you go to public school, Christian school, homeschool, do your best to teach your children these things, basics
of life.
Yes, that they can actually, like, do they know how to grow food? I mean, even if you don't have a garden, can you at least research how to grow food, or learning what soil is like? Research the things that they could need later in life to take care of their own basic needs. So that's something that has kind of shifted like over the last several years for me, when homeschooling is like learning how to take care of their basic needs takes high priority to me. Everything else, as much as I want them to learn and succeed in that, which they are at this point, the basic needs, make sure that is part of your curriculum. If you're doing more book work and that's causing stress, do less book work and focus more on basic needs and teaching them that kind of stuff, because that is very lacking in our school system today. Is they used to have sewing, they used to have
woodworking,
all kinds of skills and stuff.
Home ec.
Home ec,
yeah, that was a big part of high school. I didn't go to I didn't have that option in high school.
So just recognize as a parent, that's something that you can teach your children that no one else can, because they do live with you. So that actually, like I said, I feel like we're trying to keep our episodes tight and like reasonable,
not rambling.
And just like not super long, where moms like us can actually sit and listen to them. So this is definitely, I'm going to save some of the notes from this because I kept a bunch here. And at some point, we're going to have to do another episode on homeschooling.
And maybe even something that's a Q&A.
Yep. So that's going to wrap up today's episode on homeschooling. That is honestly just a conversation. Like that's what we want these episodes to be, is just discussing life with your friends, what's worked for you, what's not worked for you. And we will do one in the future again for homeschooling with Q&As, hopefully, that we get from listeners. The next episode is going to be on mom guilt. And this is something that I'm very passionate about as well. I don't know that there's anything in this.
I think she's going to say that
I'm passionate about
every episode she's going to say.
Every episode is passionate. Yeah. Why are we talking about it?
Yeah.
So we're going to cover mom guilt because I hear that a lot. I mean, I even heard somebody, I think it was actually you that sent it to me the other day. Like, I do a lot on social media. I love social media. And, you hear things from, I've never had it said to me, but I've heard it from other, people that do social media. Things like, well, you're only showing the good parts of your life. And that might be true. Okay. Quite frankly, there is a lot of peace in our home, and I'm very thankful for that. However, I think that I'm not going to share when I'm correcting my child. I don't, quite frankly, want to see someone else doing that. Like, social media, let the person who's actually feeding into you encourage you, take the good and leave the bad. Like eat the meat and leave the bones. And if they're not encouraging you, there is an unfollow button. Like, so just keeping in mind that sometimes the mom who you're seeing or the person you're seeing share their life openly, they're doing it because they want to inspire other people.
They're taking the good pieces of their days and sharing the good pieces.
They're taking
we all have good pieces.
Yes.
I mean, we all have good pieces of our days, and we all have maybe pieces that we go to bed and wish we didn't have that day. But like Andrea said, I don't want to see those pieces of people day. When I get on, I want to see the good pieces.
Yes, because like to me, dealing with your children is very private. Like, I don't even like correcting them in front of their own siblings. I would rather just sit down with them and have a relationship discussion with them. And that is not going to be recorded. Like, I want my kids to feel like their privacy is protected in that way. So that being said, like, social media, I know, plays into a lot of mom guilt. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing everything that person is doing. But you know what? They're a mom just like you, and you are the best mom for your children. So I'm not going to give away everything. I think we just need to go on to the next episode and talk
about that.
Mom guilt. Yep. Mom guilt. Be there
or be square.
Yes. Yep. So we'll close this one out, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time.
You've been listening to the Whole Topic podcast. To hear more, to see behind the scenes, or to get a hold of us directly, visit our socials, Facebook and Instagram, the Whole Topic podcast. If you'd like to hear more from Andrea, visit her blog at dearmark23.com, where she talks about whole foods, whole grains, and whole living. If you'd like to hear more from Stephanie, visit theranchershomestead.com, where she talks about simple living, gluten-free recipes, and farm life. If you'd like to see more from me, visit wildandforagedcare.com, where I talk about simple living, wild recipes, and natural remedies. Thank you for listening, and God bless.